Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Mandel. I'm a developer advocate for Google Cloud Platform, and I'm streaming from the office today, which means I'm using the camera from my laptop, which means I have the worst camera angle ever possibly devised. But thank you very much for hanging out with me today. I am going to do some fun stuff, I think, today. I'm kind of excited about it. So what I want to do today, actually, let me switch my screen because I always mess this up. All right, let's go over here. Perfect. So today I got a request from one of the community members from Agones, which is an open source platform for running game servers, wherein basically they were like, okay, this project looks really cool, but I don't know the basics for like how do I Docker things and how do I get them onto Kubernetes and all that kind of stuff. And like I have no idea, how do I do this kind of stuff. So I wanted to take some time and kind of go through that. We'll go as far as we can today, and then I'll probably keep going and just kind of round this out. DG Canada, oh my god, I can't pronounce any of this stuff. DG and then Inhibit. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for saying hi on chat. So what I'm going to do today is basically I'm going to take the Notic example. I'm going to try building it pretty much from scratch. That's kind of my plan. Going to Dockerize it, going to build like the configuration files for Agones, going to get it up on a cloud repository. That's kind of the plan. I may cheat in some couple of places. We may skip some small bits but I really want to focus on building just like a Docker container, getting it up on a like basically making it so you can use it, making the configuration you need to create for for Agones, basically just getting that whole stuff up and going. So what I've got here is I'm going to do this on Google Cloud Platform. And what I'm going to do, so I'm going to use first of all, we're not even going to touch Kubernetes. We're just going to start with plain old Docker. But what I'm going to do, which is going to make my life a little bit easier, is this lovely thing. So I've got a project. It's called Agones Mark, strangely enough. It's my testing project for when I'm working on Agones. Now, Google Cloud comes with this really neat thing called Cloud Shell, which I really like. It's basically a shell in which, now that's not very large. There we go. Let's make that a bit bigger. It's a shell in which I have basically as a small VM, and I can do stuff with it, and it's basically up attached to the cloud. This is going to be nice because Notic is actually quite a large download. And I've already set this up. Actually, let's make that even bigger. I've already set this up so that the files are in here. So if we cd go path, like I've got it in a go path because I'm going to be compiling some stuff. It's probably not that important. I literally just copied it so that I had access to the examples repository. And so, where are we? If we have a look in examples, I'm going to go into the Notic example, and we will see that it is empty. There is nothing inside there. Usually it is filled with stuff. And we're going to kind of build this from scratch. Now, the other cool thing I like about this is it comes with a cloud editor. So this is nice too. So we're gonna use these two things so that basically we can do this here, and then I don't have to worry as much about like pulling big things down from the sky, essentially. So why don't I just dig into, where's my examples folder? Here we go, examples, Notic, beautiful. And there's nothing in here, which is fine. Just for a reference, if you actually go into the Agones project, we have a look inside examples. Oops, wrong one, go back. Notic, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. I do some nifty things. If you want to look at a previous stream about how I integrate the SDK with this, we can talk about that a little bit later. I'm not going to go deep into that, but we'll focus on this kind of stuff. Cool. First place to start. Okay, so let's actually we'll start over here for a sec. If we Notic, this is the game. This is it's basically an FPS shooter. It's got like a deathmatch mode and that kind of stuff, and you can set it up to run your own dedicated game server, which is kind of cool. If I remember correctly, if we go into the guide, I want to say, let's have a look. Here we go. There's a I forget where was it. Here we go. Let's actually just Google it. Notic. Run game server. There's like a FAQ. Here we go. There it is. I found it. So basically, to run this as a dedicated game server is basically doing the same as just running it as running it as a thingamabob, running it as the game, but you move some files around. Here we go. Server setup. Here we go. This website is super. I don't know what it is about the Notic website. Maybe they're just. What should we call it? Come here. It's just the page is super slow. Here we go. They talk about what ports you want open. There's a certain set of ports you need to have open, and then there's a README file in here. We'll have a quick peek maybe. Actually, we probably won't. You can take my word for it. There's some files you need to move around, but basically we can get it up and running as a game server. So I'm actually going to close that because that's awful. Okay, so first thing we want to do, right? So we have this thing like Notic. We want to run it as a game server inside Agones. First thing we need to do is put it inside a Docker container. There's nothing, just so you're absolutely clear, there's nothing special about a Docker container that runs on Kubernetes. There's nothing special about a Docker container that runs for Agones on top of on top of Kubernetes. It's just a plain old Docker container. So if you're not familiar with Docker, it's basically there's a lot of people who say things like, "Oh, it's like a lightweight virtualization," and that is necessarily true. The way I like to think about it, though, is very much think of it as an artifact, right? I want to basically essentially take my operating system, or most of my operating system, because it shares kernels, that's what makes it really fast and really nice. Most of my operating system, basically the snapshot of the operating system I want, plus any files I want to run inside an artifact. And then once I have that artifact, I can move that artifact around. And we'll look at some of that as well and share it in a secure way and do that kind of stuff. And because it's an artifact that could have any arbitrary software inside it, this makes it hugely powerful because that means I don't care about what's inside it. I just say, I want Docker run that thing, and it just starts. And then I don't care what's inside it. And that's hugely powerful, which is pretty cool. So when doing this stuff, the standard Docker tutorials are really great as well. In fact, actually, let's just bring up the Docker reference in case I forget anything off the top of my head. Just in case I need to remember something. So there's a Dockerfile reference. So we start with this thing called a Dockerfile. Let's actually start there. This is basically a imperative, right? We're going to have a bunch of commands inside of here that tells Docker how to build what's called an image. And the image is that artifact we were talking about, right? When you start this, there's usually top line here is a from statement. So it's like, where do I want to base this image on? Think of it like almost like an abstract base class, or like just basically the foundation. Often you may have your own build bases. I'm just going to go from Debian Stretch, right? It's a good base. Debian's really stable. It's nice. So this is basically a tag. So where does this come from? Well, let's break this down. So we're talking about these artifacts, right? And there's a central place in which these default things come from, which is Docker Hub. This is a central place to store these artifacts. And so if I look for Debian Stretch, actually, if I just call it Debian, there we go, sweet. I'm able to access anything that's in Docker Hub. Now, you can have private, these are called repositories or registries, depending on the language you use. You can have public ones like Docker Hub. You can also have private ones as well, right? Whereas you can have private Docker Hubs. On us, we have GCR, which is Google Cloud Registry. There's Quay. There's a bunch of other ones I can't think of right now. And each Docker image has a tag. Basically, think of it as it's just like a version, right? Nothing more special than that. So when we come over here and we say from Debian Stretch, we're starting from the image Debian with the tag Stretch. That's it, right? And then we just add stuff from there. Nothing more fancy than that. So I'm gonna do a couple of things I might steal from old versions, but usually what I like to do. So what I want to do is actually grab Notic from. What do I want to do? I want to grab Notic from the internet and download it. So I'm going to need a couple of utilities to do that. So why don't we run? So first of all, I'm going to get update so I can install stuff. So I'm just going to install stuff with apt. And apt get install. I'm going to need curl to download, and I probably need unzip as well. So cool. I just want to do that. And then I'm also going to do one other thing, which I always really like to do, is so when you run things inside Docker, they usually run as root, which if you've done any Linux administration at all, you know is not necessarily a great thing in the world. So we're going to create a user. as well. So for that later on. So there's that. So we're gonna install some tools, and then we're gonna user add -m. We're gonna add a user Sonotic as well, so that when we run our Sonotic process, we run it as the Sonotic user, and then it means it can't touch a lot of stuff inside that Linux process. All right, cool. So, hey, Freight Duchess, how you doing? Good to see you too. Thanks for popping by once again. Okay, so we're writing this Dockerfile. Sweet. Okay. Where do I want to download this to? So we just created a user, which means we have like a home Sonotic. So why don't we can also set our workdir. So this is just basically saying like where, by default, all the commands, if you do anything, happens from /, just happens from there. But if we want to do everything from, say, home Sonotic, that means that all the commands, that's where we're doing stuff from. I'm going to copy paste this from another spot because I'm lazy. And I know what the URL is. So I'm going to download Sonotic from the URL. I don't want to connect to the Sonotic website because for some reason it runs really slowly. I don't know if they're doing some weird computation in the background, but they are, maybe, I don't know. And so what are we doing here? So I curl the Sonotic file down from here, right? So these are all like just bash commands. Like there's nothing magic here. If you've written any Linux administration, you've done any bash stuff, you're like, this probably looks quite familiar. Like nothing too crazy, I don't think. So I'm basically just downloading Sonotic.zip like into a Sonotic zip. I unzip it, and then I just get rid of the zip file. Now here's an interesting tip. You may notice I'm like anding commands. That's not 100% necessary. You don't have to do it that way. You could do run and then run and then run. Just because of the way Docker works, there's a layered file system. So each of these commands basically creates a new layer, and so you just end up with a bigger Docker image. So doing stuff in line is a bit nicer. Don't feel beholden to it though. Get your thing working first, and then do it, and then continue on from there. All right, so that's the good stuff. Okay, so I've downloaded this now, which is like sweet. That's awesome. So now what I need to do as well is, what am I doing here? So to do this, we saw in the FAQ, we were like, okay, we've got this Sonotic, it's downloaded. In the FAQ, there's a whole configuration section that I don't think I'm going to go into too much. That basically we need to move some configuration files around, and we need to copy in some stuff. So I'm gonna basically take that, and let's do that. Where are we? So I'm just gonna copy this from another place, and we'll go into it in a minute. Because some of this probably so. What am I doing here? So this is, again, still imperative stuff. Oh, that's cute. Oh, look at that. It does online documentation. I didn't know it did that. That's really neat. Cool. So I'm going to make a Sonotic data directory. I'm going to move the server linux.sh. That's just something that needs to happen. These copy commands here, we'll need to do some work here. Basically, this is just copying stuff off my local machine. So basically what's here, which we don't have anymore because I deleted everything, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So we can copy stuff into our container as well from local. We don't just pull in from outside, we can copy stuff from local, and we'll do that as well. Finally, I am basically just owning, so I'm making sure the Sonotic user has access to everything that's inside that home/Sonotic thing, because everything that, even while you're building the Docker container, that's all root. So we don't want that. And okay, so actually we have some more to do. So work from here. So let's actually talk a sec about these two lines. So just for reference sake, first of all, we're talking about bin wrapper. For reference sake, I am basically, what's the word I'm looking for? I talked about this in a previous stream. Basically, I'm not gonna, there's an SDK for Agones that I don't want to talk about too much today. And rather than basically injecting or integrating the SDK for Agones into Sonotic itself, because it's an open source project, which is a lot of work, I'm basically building a little wrapper program that executes Sonotic instead and then just runs it. I'm going to copy that from here. In fact, I'm going to grab a couple of things. It's a Go program. I'm going to just copy it down. I went through it in a previous where are we? A previous stream. You can go back and watch it, which is cool. I'm just gonna grab it. Cool. There's my main Go. And whatchamacallit. So I'm going to grab that. And so what I can do then is go build -o bin / wrapper. And I want to compile main.go. I think I got that right. Oop, that looks good. Sweet. If I look in bin, actually, I'll probably make that a little bigger. It's better. Cool. I can see that there's a wrapper in there. All right, so that's cool. I'm not going to go too deep into that. For interest sake, it wraps the Notic system, and then it just looks at the standard out that Notic pushes out, and then based on the standard out, it can say things like, "Hey, I'm ready," or and it just sends health checks and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go too deep into that. I really want to focus on the Dockerization kind of things. The other thing is this server config file, right, that Notic requires. And so we'll need that as well. If we have a look, you can see there's just like a whole bunch of stuff in it. I set up for this demo, I actually have it set up so that there are like 4 players and there's a bunch of bots and like all this kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. I just kind of need it. There's not a lot I can do for that. So copy link address. Let's grab that. And so that's just the configuration that Notic needs. So if we have a look in here, we can see we have a Dockerfile, main.go, server.config. Let's make that a bit bigger, actually. So we've got some bits and pieces in there. So that's copy in there. Okay, cool. So now we just need to make this thing run. So I'm actually going to say user Notic. So that means that anything that gets executed from here on out, when the image runs, is by user Notic. And then entry point. So entry point basically says, hey, when you start up this image, this is the thing I want you to run. Entry points. This is actually overridable if you wanted to when you actually run the, whatchamacallit, what's the word I'm looking for? When you actually run the Docker image. We're not going to do that, but in theory you can. And so what did we set up? So we set up this thing called the wrapper. Notic wrapper. And the wrapper takes an input of home Notic, which is where it expanded to, and then server Linux.sh. And so you can put in anything you like within the entry point. In fact, now that I look at my example, bear with me one second. Let's have a look here. I feel like I actually want to write this in a slightly different way. There's a couple of different formats that you can write entry points in. So you can see how I just wrote it as a series of like things. So I wrote it as, entry like that. There's also entry point executable param, which is actually preferred, which is like the exec form. So let's see if we can make that work. I feel like that would make me feel better. I actually think I don't do this in the actual example here. So it should be easy enough to change. It's basically, you're just passing in all the args. There we go. I think I've had issues with not doing that before. So basically, we just took our command and we split it. We split it on that. So that's our Docker file, at least in theory. I'm going to assume nothing fails. We'll have a look. We're actually going to build it and see whether anything fails or anything goes horribly wrong. So we'll see how we go. So what we want to do now is build this image. This might take a few minutes, so we'll have some fun. So what do we want to do? Docker build. We want to give it a tag. Now, we need to actually send this somewhere. We want to put it in like the registry we're talking about, but we want to put it in, ideally we want to put it in our private registry. We don't want other people to be able to have access to this, right? It's our thing, right? Unless you want to make it public, which is fine too, right? But in this instance, we don't want to make it public. I'm going to put it on Google Container Registry because it's the whatchamacallit, it's the container registry that comes to Google Cloud, and it has the integration with the security hooks that we have, et cetera, So I've got all that security already basically built for me, which is lovely. So to do that, I need to actually preface the tag with where it's going to end up. Let me think about this for a sec. Bear with me one sec. Now there is an environment variable I can grab called, I think it's project. Yes. So inside here, I have a Google Cloud project. All right, cool. That's good. So what I want to do, to get it onto GCRs, I need to tag it with gcr.io, which is the a Google Cloud repository, like that's the prefix I need, and then I need to give it the project ID, which is this project. Oh no, what is it? Google. Oh, this is going to go over the next line. So I could actually write that out, which is fine. But that tells it, hey, I'm just going to use the environment variable, which is Agones mark, which is the name of my project. And then I need to give it a name, which will be Notic, which is fine. And then I'm going to give it a tag of 0.1. That seems pretty reasonable. And then the thing I'm saying when I'm Docker building, like, what do I actually build? Like, I've given it this tag. Basically, I just want it to build this directory. This directory means it is going to go look for this Dockerfile, the one that we wrote right here. So let's run that. Let's see. That's, nope, I did that bad. Okay, where are we? Oh, shouldn't have the circles around it. Let's get that right. All right, let's try that again. Okay, here we go. So what it's going to do now is it's going to pull down Debian, right? It couldn't find it. It was like, hey, I don't know what Debian is, so I'm just going to pull that down from Docker Hub. Here we are doing the apt update. I made a mistake with my apt command. Of course, there's going to be fun stuff in here. All right, so apt-get install. It's going to be -y. So we need to make that right. That's right. This is why we're doing it this way. Okay, so there we go. Now we go again. That looks better. Apt does not have a stable CLI. Oh, I'm sorry. Apt-get install. Thank you. That should be better. That's all right. Doing this stuff live. So one thing you'll notice actually while this is going through is you'll notice that it went past the Debian install super quickly. The reason it does that is because we talked a bit about the layered file system. So once it's already got this first line here, that's essentially a layer in the system and it doesn't have to get it again. So each one is its own layer as it goes through, which is quite nice. Okay, so while that's building in the background, I'm going to show you a couple of other things. So let's come in over here. So eventually what we want to actually send this to is a place called Container Registry. And so that basically we can make this available. Are the commas missing from the entry point command? I don't. Ooh, they might be. That's a good question. Let's have a look. They are. Whoopsies. All right. Well, we'll let that finish, and then we'll. well pointed inhibit. That is. Do we need comments? Do we need those? Yeah, we need comments. All right. We'll see if that fails. It probably will. But the good thing is once this is the download step is the thing that takes a few minutes because it's a fairly large download. We'll come back to that. Okay. So. Container Registry. This is where I can put my images. Right now, there's nothing in here at all. So what we might actually do instead, while that's building, is actually set up a Kubernetes cluster. Why don't we get that going? Because that'll be fun. Let's see how we're doing over here. So that's got a couple of minutes left. So yeah, setting up a Kubernetes cluster is going to take a couple of minutes. So why don't we do that? So let's create ourselves a Kubernetes cluster. Let's create a cluster. All right, because we will need to create a cluster to run stuff on. I'm going to call it streaming cluster. Oops. Streaming cluster. There we go. Cluster version, I will like 1.9.7. I haven't tested on 1.10 yet, so there's that. Machine type is fine. Size is 3 is perfect. I'm going to come down here. What other advanced options? Labels. Here we go. I feel like I need something. Kubernetes node labels. No, that's not what I want. I don't want node labels. What I want is services. I feel like I'm trying to remember. So I usually script this. So what I need is actually labels for cluster labels. What I need is I need a label for network firewall rules. Oh man, I have to remember how to do this. All right, so GCE network labels, labeling resources. Here we go. I'm just going back through here while it's going on in the background. So here we go. Labels, lightweight root group. I think that's the way that we need to do it. So let's add a label. We'll call it game servers. No, that doesn't seem right. Let's see if I can work this out backwards. It's been a while since I've actually had to do this because I usually script it. Here we go. VPC network. I think I've already got my firewall rules set up from a previous project. Oh no, it's not there anymore. Okay, cool. So, all right, so just to backtrack for a sec, I need a Kubernetes cluster. That is 100% true. The thing I will need to do is allow access to those Kubernetes clusters. Specified target tags. Here we go. So, firewall rules applies to those instances within the virtual network. Target tags. All right. So how do I do this? It's actually a really interesting question. I usually script it. I don't do it through the interface. So let's have a look. Let's actually have a look. I'll cheat a little. Actually, let's go here. And we'll have a look while that's setting up in the background. So inside of Agones, I have GKE test cluster. I have this thing called a deployment template. But what I want to see here, tags. It just says tags and it says game server. Okay, let's see if we can work out how to do that then. All right, so we're going to call it streaming server, streaming. Actually, we'll just call it streaming. That's fine. I don't actually care too much. Actually, I don't want it in central. I would like it on my side of the country, please. I am on the west coast, I think. Cool. Legacy. Yep, I don't want any of that. All right. Add labels. That's key value pairs. Okay, that's not what I want. Basic authentication, auto scaling, blah blah blah. I don't want any of that. Nodes per pool. Nope. Anytime Kubernetes node labels. Nope, don't want that. Interesting. Okay. I am actually not sure. That's fun. Okay. Let's add a label and leave its value be empty, and we'll see what happens. Let's create this. Let's do that. That can run in the background. We have some other stuff. So we'll let that run in the background, and we'll see what happens. Actually, let's have a look. If I come into... So behind the scenes is actually just firing up virtual machines. It's not actually doing anything that special. Have we got any VMware instances? No, we don't have any yet. Okay, so we'll let that finish. Okay, so that finished. That's cool. I think Nibbit is right in that I will probably need to build this again. So that should actually take all of 2 seconds, which it did. So that's good. All right. So now if I say Docker images, like if I look at what images I have a few. I have that Debian one, and now I have this gcr.io Marcus Notic, blah, 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 which is good. There's a none here. You can see that's probably because I rebuilt it, so it had the old tag. If I want to get rid of those really easy, I can actually do a Docker system prune as well, and that'll get rid of any of those. So let's get that back. All right, so now that should be gone. So what I want to do at this point, actually more than anything else, is test that this thing works. It has an integration into the SDK. And if we actually do, so if we want a Docker run, for example, gcr.io, Notic 0.1, right, and we run that, it's going to say, I'm trying to connect to the Agones with, I'm trying to connect with the SDK, and I'm like, I can't. That sucks, right? But I might be working locally. I might be building this thing locally. I need to do like some work locally. I don't necessarily want to be pushing this up to a cluster every time. How can I do that? Thankfully, there's actually some nice ways to do that. You may actually even build like your Notic stuff and all that kind of stuff locally as well, even before you put it inside a Docker container. Totally cool and fine, not a problem. We support that as well. But in this particular instance, we're setting up a Docker container, so we'll look at that. So how can we do that? So I'm glad you asked. Oh, I stepped down Agones. So Agones has some nice stuff in it for, where are we? For doing local development as well. So the connecting thing is basically this thing called an SDK server that we can run locally as well. And it's here inside the releases section. So I'm looking at the 0.20 RC, which is what I'm working against right now. And I can grab it from here. So I can grab the Agones SDK server. That's right here. Copy link address. Sweet. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to start actually a new cloud session. Let me do that. Connecting, and make that bigger. All right, so let's pull that down. sweet. All right, that's cool. Do I have 7 answer here? Nope. All right, so unzip. Unzip. So we'll unzip that. Cool. And you'll see inside here, right, we have an SDK server for Mac, an SDK server for Linux, an SDK server for Windows. So sweet, all good. What we can do is we can run these in local mode. They actually are the same binary as what we would run inside Agones, but it has a local mode that we can run as well. So let's just do that. Let's just fire this thing up. So SDK server, Linux, and to do that, we just go local. If you're at all interested, actually, you can actually run help. You'll see there's a bunch of commands, local, and so we can actually just set this to local, and that'll start that up. And you'll see there's a bunch of, let's make that bigger. See there's a bunch of, what's the word? Debug output that we can use here as well, which is nice. Now, fun. Okay. Ooh, that's small again. Let's not do that. Now we can Docker run this again. Now, if we want this Docker container to connect to this local process that we have, there's all sorts of weird and fancy tricks we could do if we wanted to Dockerize the other thing. Let's not do any of that. There's actually some nice stuff we can do. When we Docker run, we can actually, so when a Docker container runs by default, and I'll actually do RM because that'll kill the background process. It runs in its own IP address and its own sort of network namespace. So if it tries to connect to localhost, which is what the SDK does, it won't work. That would be bad. But we have control over where the network works. So what we can actually do is also say network equals host, which says to the Docker container, hey, run on the same network as this machine. So they're all running on the same thing, which is pretty sweet. And now, gcr.io, Notic 0.1. If I run this now, in theory, there we go. So actually, I'm going to scroll up for a bit so you can see what's going on. Whee! Lots of goodies. Lots and lots and lots of goodies. I wanted to go all the way to the top. All right, so I'm not going to do that because that apparently is taking too long. What we can do, though, is have a look over here. And we can see here, all right, cool. So stuff's happening, right? We're getting health pings, which is good. We started the SDK sideware with ready request here. It's been received. So that's like the game server says it's ready. So we can see this thing is working locally. And this is a great way of testing to see if stuff is locally. Either you build a command locally and run it, or you can Dockerize it and then run it, or both. Both is good. I think actually both is good in this particular instance. And so this is all good. So we can do this stuff already, which is good. All right, sweet. So that's working. That's great. All right, so we actually will want to stop this. So if we run, actually, is an interesting thing. If we run Docker PS, we should see that everything's running. Whoop. Nope, it died. It died because the health ping died. Okay, that's cool. That's actually good. So if we Docker PS, you can usually see what's running. If you Docker PS all, I think it is. Yeah, you can see some of the stopped ones. If you don't do that -rm, then they don't disappear. But we can also just do a Docker system prune, and it will get rid of those for us as well. So we can get rid of that. Okay, perfect. All right, so we have a Docker image, and we're like, sweet, that's great. What we need to do now is get that up on Container Registry. From within here, where are we? Let's actually see. So we should be able to do it. I'm thinking we can probably do a Docker push straight up now. Sonic 0.1. There are some authentication steps that need to happen though. So let's actually gcloud auth docker. I think it is off the top of my head. There we go. Close. So if you're running Docker locally and you want to push up to gcr.io, and you'll want to have gcloud if you're using gcr.io. Each private repository has its own thing, but if you're running on Google Kubernetes engine, I recommend GCR. If you do this, then it will set up these things called cred helpers, which basically makes it that you use your Google Cloud credentials to push stuff up, is really what it boils down to. It's nothing more special than that. And so I'm willing to bet that inside Cloud Shell this has already happened, but you would need to probably just run that step. Let's have a look. We'll see if we need to run it. So let's push. Yeah, there we go. Boom. Oh, no, you don't have the needed permissions to perform this operations. You have invalid credentials to authenticate your request. Follow advanced authentication. There we go. So check that out, right? So let's actually do the steps. So let's do that. gcloud auth configure docker. Literally what we're talking about here. Okay, good. So it doesn't Yes, I would like to continue. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm sure it's fantastic. Excellent. All right, let's try pushing that up now. There we go. So it's pushing all that stuff up into our Google Cloud repository. One of the reasons I did this from Cloud Shell is because it's quite close to gcr.io, and I really didn't want to be pushing up like a gig. You can see here, like that's a whole gigabyte of stuff. I didn't want to be doing that from my local machine while streaming. So there's a whole bunch of ways. Actually, you can build your images in the cloud. I'm not going to talk about that today, but just know that those exist, and we have a bunch of tools for that, and they're pretty nice. I just want to have a quick look inside my Kubernetes cluster real quick to... sweet, my label's there. All right, cool. I think that's what I want. Or is it network tags? I don't know. I'm actually not sure. This is going to be fun. We'll work this out. We may have to tweak this, but we'll see how we go. Where are we? Okay. Kubernetes engine. Yeah, I always script this stuff, which is kind of fun. All right, so what I wanted to actually look at, was... Boom. If we go into our container registry, have a look and see images. Is it there yet? Nope. It's already going. It's still going. All right, it's still half going. All right. So while that is going, let me think this through. All right, so that seems to be running. Well, what we'll need... Okay, so that's going to be up. So what we'll need to do next is essentially install Agones. To do that, I like to do that through Helm. That makes me super happy. Let's have a look and think about what we need to do today. All right. We'll actually follow our instructions, which would be a good thing, wouldn't it? Here we go. Installations. Follow these instructions to create a cluster in Google Kubernetes engine. Sweet. All right, choosing a shell, Cloud Shell, creating a cluster. All right, here we go. Actually, I should follow my own stuff. Yeah, see, I normally do it through tags game server. So you know what? I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna use my own instructions because I should do that. So why don't we do that instead? So let's actually delete that old cluster. There's a way to do it, but I'd probably through here. But you know what? I'm just gonna delete this one. Bye. And we'll come back to it later. We're going to do it through the command line, and that'll make me feel a lot better. And it means I will actually follow my own instructions, which is a good thing. So this is the command that I've got here. Boom, copy that. What is it actually doing? So let's just have a quick look while that's going up. So it creates, gcloud is the command. It creates a cluster with a particular name. We want a 1.9 cluster. That's currently supported. 1.10 should work, in theory. We're going to enable RBAC. We're not going to talk about that much today. The tag is important. Basic auth. There's a password for the master, which is fine. We have some scopes that we're going to set up, so it does stuff. And 3 nodes and just a standard machine, right? So basically just a 3-node Kubernetes cluster. And there's some descriptions here about exactly what's going on. So I don't know, just grab that. We'll see if anything breaks. So if I paste that, is it going to let me go all the way back? No, it's not. That's not what I want. So I'm going to need to edit that. So let's have a look. Notic. Let's just actually refresh. There's a bunch of stuff in there now. Zoom. Let's give me just like a temp file. We'll actually just nano it. That's fine. Nano install.sh. There we go. Let's do that. Actually, we want to do it this way. So, why not? Let's do it in a bash file, because why not? Hashbang bin /bash. All right. So what are we going to call this? We're calling this streaming. Sweet. And I think according to the instructions as well, from memory, I may want to set a compute zone as well. So why don't I do that as well? It basically tells it where to put stuff. US West A was actually really useful. So let's do that. That's where I Actually, I may already have one. Config list. Here we go. No, I don't. All right, so gcloud config. I have some people outside who are gonna bug me. So we will stop in about 10 minutes. So we're gonna set this compute zone. Here we go. We'll have some stuff set up for this compute zone. US West. What was it? What was it? I can go look these up, but there was one. US West 1A. I think that's right. Cool. All right. I just want to. Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. Has that gone up? All right. That's gone up. All right. Perfect. All right. We'll come. Let's get this fired. Where did I put that? Oh, chmod plus x install sh. So let's run that. Oh, I thought I said plus x. We should see it. Okay. Anyway, so if we have a look up here, we can see the command. I mean, that's not a big deal. Oop, come on, give me what I want. Where did I put that? Oh, I put that in my root. All right, let's look there. So yeah, I called it streaming. It's going to create that cluster. That should be up and running. And then the tags are there. Tags are important. So by default, Kubernetes nodes are public, they're not accessible. So they're locked down by firewall. So we're going to need to set up a firewall for that. We probably won't get to that today, but we did get stuff up. Okay, but if we go, here we go. That's starting up. We can see that container. Registry, if we have a look in our registry. All right, let's have a look there. We can now see, okay, we have a Notic image. It's 0.1. It's there. It's available. We can actually see some details about it too if you really want. And we can see some things that are happening inside there. So, cool. I do need to finish up in 5 minutes, so maybe we'll wrap up here and I'll let this cluster create in the background so it's ready to go for next time we're getting started. But just to kind of recap real quick, what did we do that was kind of neat? So we took our Notic example, we built out our Dockerfile from scratch. Right, we went from Debian, we installed a bunch of stuff, we set up some users and some entry points, we compiled even and copied some stuff around as well. We put that in there, and so we created an image, and then we authenticated against GCR.io, and then we took ourselves and we pushed it up to the Google Cloud Container Registry. Man, say that 3 times quickly. We have about 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any particular questions about that workflow, or about running the things locally, or any of the steps that I've taken so far? I think this is probably actually a really good spot to stop, just because we're in a happy place. And then when we come back next time, we'll get the Kubernetes cluster up and running, and we can then start installing Agones, and then put this on top of Agones and get this up and running, get the configuration files done. I think that's probably going to be a good thing. So, what was I going to say? If you really want to dig into this a little bit more as well, just so you're aware, like there's a finished example inside Agones under Notic. It's all right there. You can see it. You can see other examples as well, including a C++ example. You can basically see that a lot of this stuff really isn't anything like amazing or like extra special, I guess is probably the words I'm looking for. There's nothing in here that actually says, hey, even like this is the C++ version, right? We just copy in a compiled binary, right? The only special thing is compiling the binary. I like to chown it to make sure that, there's a user, and then we just set up an entry point. Like there's nothing extra special in any of that kind of stuff. We could have done stuff where we compiled it inside the Dockerfile too. There's neat stuff that way, but like for this, it's just simple. Again, the Go version is very much the same, right? We copy on a binary and we're ready to go. Cbro says it's too early to code. It is never too early to code. I've been definitely known to get up at like 5 a.m. with an idea. Cool. Yeah, so I think, all right, so it sounds like everyone seems pretty happy, which is good. I just want to say thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you found this valuable, and I hope you found it useful, and got you started at least a little bit on your path to working with Docker. I will also say the inside Docker itself has a bunch of, I'm not talking about that. There's Docker tutorials that are interactive that are really nice as well. Where are we? There's a, where is it? Docker, let me actually find it. I found it before. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Getting started. Where is it? There's interactive Docker tutorials. I'm gonna have to find this now. This is killing me. Interactive Docker tutorials. I know they have it. Oh, there's one over there. Oh, there you go. Over at Katakoda, they actually do really nice stuff as well. And I know, yeah, there's a bunch of these. Katakoda does really nice stuff too. I've been a big fan of them. They've also got a really nice Kubernetes one as well. Katakoda has a bunch of these interactive. So there's like, here we go. So exactly, free courses, Docker and containers, Kubernetes introduction, and a bunch of other stuff as well. So those are really nice too. So that's katakoda.com. I'm 99. I actually thought that, yeah, see this looks really familiar. Here we go, check it out. Docker.com getting started, and it doesn't exist anymore. Oh no. Okay, well there is, yeah, Katakoda is great. I would definitely recommend their stuff. I thought Docker itself had some. I probably do. If anyone can find it, just send me a thing. Otherwise, yeah, thank you very much. Sebro said I missed the stream. I'm sad you weren't here as well, but you can catch me on YouTube. As usual, 9 a.m. Pacific is when I usually stream. I think next week I might be half an hour late. I'll put stuff out. I'll let people know. I probably won't do an impromptu stream this week as well, just because I think my parents are in town. And I'll be hanging out with them, but we'll see what happens. And yeah, if you follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to my YouTube channel, all the good things. Really appreciate you all hanging out and having a good time and playing with Docker. All right, cool. Thank you very much, everyone, and I will chat to you all later.